There has only ever been one throne on this planet, and every single creature that's ever sat on it has bled for the privilege. Forget size, forget firepower. Being an alpha in the Monsterverse has nothing to do with who's biggest. It's about a sound, a frequency, a call that crawls into the skull of every monster on Earth and rewrites their free will in an instant. And here's the part that should keep you up at night. One of the creatures on this list used that power to nearly turn our entire planet into a graveyard, and he almost won. By the time we're done, you're going to understand why the crown has never once been safe, and why that scar on Godzilla's back is the single most terrifying detail in the entire franchise. Let's get the definition locked, because almost everyone gets this wrong. Monarch, the organization quietly tracking these things since the 1940s, classifies an alpha as a titan that other titans physically submit to. When an alpha roars, it isn't noise. It's a command, a bioacoustic dominant signal that overrides the instincts of every lesser titan in range and forces them to bow, retreat, or fight on the alpha's behalf. That is the entire reason Godzilla matters. He isn't just strong, he's the one voice the whole planet obeys. But the throne has been challenged far more times than the films ever let on. False kings who stole the crown through alien biology. Usurpers who clawed up from the hollow earth to take it by force. A rival king who refused to bow on principle. An ancient tyrant who enslaved a creature older than Godzilla himself and turned it into a living weapon. So this is the complete hierarchy. Every confirmed alpha and every titan that ever credibly reached for the crown. Ranked, explained, torn apart to the canon. We start at the top. Godzilla. The apex that never stopped being king. Here's the canonical fact people constantly underestimate. Godzilla is not a mutant. He is not a product of our bombs. He predates us by hundreds of millions of years. An apex predator from the Permian era who ruled the surface when the planet's radiation ran thousands of times hotter than today. He doesn't breathe oxygen. He metabolizes radiation. He's a walking nuclear reactor with a spine, and he surfaced in 1954 not because we found him, but because we got close enough to his feeding grounds that he finally noticed us. And that's where the first great Monarch cover-up comes in. Every nuclear test in the Pacific in 1954, Castle Bravo, the whole program, and was sold to the public as a weapons test. It wasn't. They were assassination attempts. Monarch had found a god sleeping in the deep, and the military's entire strategy was to drop hydrogen bombs on it until it stopped moving. It didn't work. All they did was feed him. All they did. What makes Godzilla the alpha, though, isn't the atomic breath. It's restoration. He exists to drag the planet back into balance, and he's brutally, mechanically efficient about it. Watch what he does to anything that throws the ecosystem out of order. The Mutos in 2014, a parasite species breeding out of control. He didn't just kill the female. He pried her jaws apart and fired his heat ray straight down her throat until the head came off her body. The fandom calls it the kiss of death, and the franchise has treated it as his signature execution ever since. By King of the Monsters, he's evolved further, pushed so far past his limits absorbing a nuclear payload that he goes thermonuclear, his whole body glowing molten orange as the streets of Boston melt beneath him. And by the new Empire, he reaches a form nobody saw coming. After draining a rival Sea Titan and famously curling up to recharge inside the Roman Colosseum, yes, that genuinely happens, he emerges pink, crystalline, and evolved, with a spiral heat ray that carves straight through the planet's crust. He didn't get stronger by accident. He sensed something coming. He was charging up for a war. Here's the detail that recontextualizes the entire character. That jagged scar across Godzilla's back? It is not decoration, and it was not a movie afterthought. The new Empire confirms Godzilla was not always the undisputed king. In the ancient past, there was a war beneath the surface, a conflict so catastrophic it nearly ended him. And he carries the wound from it to this day. Monarch buried that history. For decades, they sold the world the story of an eternal, untouchable apex predator, when the truth is the king once came within an inch of losing everything to something we'll get to later on this list. Hold that scar in your mind. It's going to matter. King Ghidorah. The false king who almost won. If Godzilla is the natural order, Ghidorah is the violation of it. The single most important distinction in the whole franchise, so lock it in. Ghidorah is not from Earth. Monarch designates him Monster Zero because he appears nowhere, not in the fossil record, not on the evolutionary tree, nowhere in the planet's history. He fell out of the sky, an extraterrestrial, three-headed hydra built around one purpose: land on a world, seize its life forms, and terraform it into a scorched, dead wasteland that suits him. And his alpha call works on the other Titans. That is the horror of it. Because Ghidorah can issue the dominant signal, every monster on Earth rises when he commands. Not because he's the rightful king, but because he's screaming the right frequency. Rodan bows. Titans across every continent wake up and start tearing civilization apart in his name. The films show you the planet dying in real time under a false king, with nothing standing between humanity and extinction but a wounded Godzilla left for dead. Because here is how Ghidorah actually won, temporarily. The military panics and deploys a weapon called the Oxygen Destroyer to kill him, and it misses the point entirely. His alien biology shrugs it off and he regrows the lost head. But the blast catches Godzilla and nearly kills the one creature capable of stopping him. For a stretch of that film, the rightful king is dying on the ocean floor while the false king owns the planet. That is how close it came. What makes Ghidorah genuinely nightmarish is the regeneration. Sever a head and another erupts from the stump in seconds. The official novelization goes further still, treating the three heads as three distinct minds in one body. The dominant right head, Ichi, calling the shots while the others squabble and feed. You aren't fighting one monster, you're fighting a committee of alien predators that can't be permanently wounded by anything short of total annihilation. Exactly what Godzilla finally delivers when he tears the central head clean off and incinerates what's left. But Ghidorah did not actually stay dead. And almost nobody talks about this. One of his severed heads was recovered by Apex Cybernetics, who reverse-engineered his alien tissue to build Mecha Godzilla. They thought they were piloting a machine. They were wrong. Ghidorah's consciousness was still alive inside that skull, dormant, waiting. And the moment Mecha Godzilla powered up on raw Hollow Earth energy, the false king's mind hijacked the entire machine and turned it on its own creators. Sit with that. Ghidorah was so dangerous he nearly conquered the planet a second time as a ghost piloting a robot. The only reason we're still here is that Godzilla and Kong paused their war long enough to tear that thing apart together. Kong, the king who refused to bow. Now it gets complicated because Kong is an alpha too, just a completely different species of one. Godzilla rules through raw apex dominance. Kong rules through intelligence. He's the last of his kind. A race of giant apes the Iwi people of Skull Island have worshipped as protector gods for generations. And unlike every other Titan here, Kong is a tool user. He thinks. He grieves. He makes decisions out of loyalty and memory, not just instinct. He's also still growing. The films are explicit he hasn't even hit full size, which means Kong's ceiling is genuinely unknown. The entire engine of Godzilla vs. Kong is the oldest law in the franchise. There cannot be two alphas. The instant Kong leaves the protective barrier of Skull Island, Godzilla feels a rival king out in the open and comes to settle it the only way the natural order ever does. And to Kong's enormous credit, he doesn't lose so much as get outclassed by a creature one full tier above him. Godzilla wins the surface, where radiation and the open sea are home turf. But Kong does not submit. He claims his own kingdom instead, the Hollow Earth, the ancestral home of his entire species. Two kings, two domains, one uneasy truce. And his weapon tells you everything about how smart he is. In the Hollow Earth, Kong arms himself with an axe forged around a dorsal plate from a dead member of Godzilla's own species, a blade that can absorb and channel atomic energy. He learns to catch Godzilla's heat ray on the flat of it and hurl it right back. No other Titan adapts mid-fight like that. Kong doesn't outmuscle his enemies, he outthinks them. Here's the deep cut almost nobody outside the comics knows. Before the films, Kong had already fought off an alpha challenger. In the graphic novel Kingdom Kong, a creature called Camazotz claws up from the deepest, darkest caverns of the Hollow Earth. A colossal demonic bat the size of a titan, blinded by millennia in total darkness, hunting the atomic-rich blood of other titans and trying to blot out the sun so his kind can feed in permanent night. The ancient Maya recorded warnings about him as a literal death god. When a supernatural storm drowns Skull Island in darkness, he invades with a swarm of bat monsters to kill Kong and crown himself alpha over the corpse. Kong beats him and banishes him into the dark, and that fight is exactly why Monarch was so terrified of Kong ever leaving the island. Because an apex like Kong is a magnet for every challenger on the planet, and the biggest challenger of all was still out there, waiting in the ocean. The Scar King, the tyrant who ruled the world below. For most of this franchise, we assumed the Hollow Earth was wilderness. It wasn't. It was a conquered empire, and the Scar King was the despot sitting on top of it. This is the alpha the entire mythology had been quietly building toward, because his existence rewrites Kong's whole bloodline. Long ago, the Scar King didn't just rule the great apes of the Hollow Earth. He enslaved them. He drove Kong's ancestors to the brink of extinction and ruled the underworld through pure, sadistic tyranny. And he is, in the truest sense, an alpha, but one who reigns through cruelty rather than natural dominance. He commands armies. Hordes of apes obey him. Packs of skullcrawlers serve him. He is the only Titan in the franchise who leads a coordinated military force, and he does it because he is genuinely, recognizably evil in a way the others are not. Godzilla kills to restore balance. Ghidorah kills because it's his nature. The Scar King kills because he enjoys dominion. And he wants more. His ambition is the apocalypse scenario the whole film is racing to prevent. He wants out. He wants to break free of the Hollow Earth, climb to the surface, and conquer it the way he conquered everything below. And he comes terrifyingly close because the Scar King has one advantage no other tyrant ever had. He doesn't fight his own battles. He has a weapon, a living one. Which brings us to the most dangerous creature on this entire list. Watch how the Scar King controls his weapon, because it's one of the most disturbing details in any of these films. He carries a relic, a whip set with a glowing crystal, and that crystal is wired directly into the nervous system of an ancient Titan, letting him inflict agony on command. He does not lead his ultimate weapon, he tortures it into obedience. Every devastating thing that creature does, it does because the Scar King is hurting it. And here is where it all snaps together. This is the power that nearly ended Godzilla in the ancient past. The Scar King's regime, and the weapon it controlled, is the reason the King of the Monsters carries that scar. Everything on this list has been circling one ancient war, and we've finally reached the creature at the center of it, Shimo. The weapon that scarred a god. Shimo is the reason you should be afraid. She is older than Godzilla, possibly one of the most ancient titans still alive. A primordial creature whose body radiates cold so absolute it can drag the entire planet into a new ice age. Where Godzilla is fire and radiation, Shimo is absolute zero given a heartbeat. And in that ancient war beneath the world, it was Shimo's power, wielded by the Scar King, that came closer to killing Godzilla than anything before or since. That scar isn't from a fair fight. It's a frostbite wound from a god of ice that the king barely survived. The tragedy is that Shimo isn't evil. She's enslaved, a weapon of mass destruction held on a leash of pure pain, forced to freeze and destroy by a tyrant who'd burn out her nervous system the instant she refused. That's what makes the climax land. When that crystal's control finally shatters, you are not watching a villain go down. You're watching a terrified ancient creature freed from millennia of torture. And the second she's free, she stops being a weapon. She is simply one of the most powerful alphas the planet has ever produced, finally allowed to be herself. And that is the unspoken rule this whole list has been teaching you. Power and the throne are not the same thing. Shimo had the raw strength to freeze the world, but she was never the king, because the crown was never hers to choose. Being an alpha was never about who does the most damage. It's about who the planet decides to follow, which monsters choose the crown, and which ones have it forced onto them. So here's what should genuinely unsettle you going forward. Right now, the Monsterverse has two reigning alphas. Godzilla on the surface, Kong in the world below. And that balance is held together by nothing but a fragile truce between two kings who once tried to kill each other. Monarch is tracking more Titan activity than at any point in recorded history. The Hollow Earth runs deeper than anyone has mapped, The energy holding that ecosystem together is destabilizing, and every single time a new threat surfaces, the throne erupts into open war within days. The next king is already out there. The only question left is what crawls up to challenge the crown next, and whether the planet survives the coronation. If you want to be ready before that hits, you need the next breakdown locked and loaded. So hit subscribe right now, smash that notification bell, and don't you dare miss it.